Hi, and welcome to part two of the budget tutorial. So to recap part one, we basically went through the nitty gritty of setting up your budget, scrubbing your data, categorizing it in the proper way. In this section, we're gonna close the that subject matter and talk a little bit about transfers and savings. But then we're gonna get into kind of the discussion of what we'll talk about in our next budget meeting. So um, to go back into the budget, we'll hit budget, transactions, and what I want to cover quickly is transfers. So anytime that you pay off a credit card, you're going to want to categorize it as a transfer. Now the reason for this is a credit card is a revolving line of credit. So you actually are paying off that credit card, but then you're also using that credit card for current transactions. So unlike installments, like a student loan debt, you're not adding additional balance to that. So for credit cards, we have to treat it a little bit differently. So if you think of it this way, if you click under this credit card and we see Walmart Supercenter spent $59. When we actually, if we were then to go and pay that $59 balance from a checking account, um, it would also show up, and we say we categorize it under the loan payment. It would basically be double booking that loan. So we'd have a $59 charge on the credit card, and then we'd have a $59 charge from the checking account to pay that back. So we don't want to double book. So that's why the transfer is really needed, and it's kind of a special case. So if you have any questions about that, we can talk through it a little bit more. The other thing I want to talk about is the excluded from budget. So this is kind of instances where you don't really expect it. So in the case of you're going to purchase a home and you need to pay for an appraisal or an inspection, and it's just something that you didn't account for, that charge would be there. And obviously we want to minimize these as much as possible and plan, but that's kind of an example of what that would be, and we can kind of go through these in our next meeting as well. So the next thing that I want to do is quickly talk about this section, the savings slash bucket money. So you often hear me talk about one of the main things that a financial planner should do is help you identify saving or bucket opportunities, whether it be to fund an emergency fund, to fund a bucket for a down payment of a house, maybe it's a 529 for a child's education, and to direct as much as possible from your everyday check-in into these buckets. So it's really an expense. It's the cliche of paying yourself first in action. So that's one of the line items that we've created. So one of the exercises that we'll do when we meet is kind of figure out what that number is. So if you go back to budget and you see, now that everything is categorized properly, so this is basically what this number shows you is, in the last 3 months we've spent $2,100 in housing. So just get an idea. So if you scroll down and you hit action items, you scroll down. This basically says that on average, in the last 3 months, on average, you've spent $700 in housing. Average in the last 3 months, you've spent $109 in auto and transport. So what we're going to do in our next meeting is basically kind of go through these line by line and talk through it to say, okay, is this an accurate number? Can we book this at X number, and just see where the budget falls out. So this budget number will eventually rise, and we'll get to a good number and we'll lock it in. Now, to kind of revert back to this discussion, basically the formula that we're going to follow here is your savings slash bucket number will equal your income minus your budget plus credit card payment. Now, that's going to sound very confusing now, and I'll kind of get into the nitty gritty of what that entails. But for now, we just want to make sure that your transactions for the last 3 months are categorized correctly. We kind of have a zeroed out budget, and then we'll walk through it together and kind of arrive at what we can defer to some of these buckets. So that is the budget tutorial. That is part two. Thank you very much for listening, and I look forward to kind of talking to you next time and figuring it out together. See you next time. Thanks.